I opened my eyes and found myself back in my wife's high school years. But this time, I had already made up my mind. I wanted to live a different way. I would only be an outsider, quietly observing, watching her embrace the brilliant life that was meant to be hers. Even if my existence wasn't part of those good things, I was willingly resigned to it. Ding dong. The bell announcing the start of class rang out, its sound clear and decisive, instantly piercing across the entire campus. The noisy atmosphere from moments ago was completely suppressed by this bell, and everything immediately fell silent. High school life was always like this. The short break between classes vanished in a flash. The hallways of the classroom block gradually became empty, the air faintly smelling of the rush to plunge into the sea of knowledge. The mixed footsteps of the students earlier and the faint murmurs of conversation seemed to be wiped clean by something, everyone merging into the flow of people, quietly returning to their respective classrooms. I shrank into the corner of the last row of desks. After all, this spot was practically banishment to the borderlands. No one cared about a poor student like me. My eyes never left the doorway, glued to the girl who had just walked in. Her name is Violet. A beautiful name, isn't it? Heh. Realizing my mouth had unconsciously curved up again, showing a standard foolish smile, I immediately gave my left cheek a light slap. She was wearing light-rimmed glasses on the bridge of her nose. Behind the lenses, her eyes looked a bit tired, with faint blue shadows clearly visible beneath them. No need to guess, she definitely stayed up late last night doing practice problems. Among the students wearing identical uniforms, she really didn't stand out. But a girl so unassuming that no one would notice her in a crowd was also the most renowned top student in the entire grade. The first place ranking in the science track, she had held it for 3 years straight. That was the person who would later become my wife. No, that's wrong. Now that I'm back, the trajectory of her life will be completely different. She will become a shining star in the field of aerospace or a respected physics professor, perhaps even achieving fame comparable to people like Albert Einstein. But she will no longer be my wife, nor will she be connected to a pathetic wretch like me. Seeing that the seats were nearly full, I gave her one last lingering look before retracting my gaze, untying the uniform jacket I had tied around my waist, and putting it on neatly. The homeroom teacher rushed into the classroom, clutching a stack of exam papers, his expression very serious. "Pop quiz, everyone." His voice was emotionless, shattering the silence of the whole class. The students below immediately started murmuring, but only dared to softly complain a few times before resignedly pulling out their pens and paper. My eyebrow twitched as well, my heart filled with annoyance. To be honest, having to relive my student life, the most annoying thing was exactly this: a small test every 2 days, a big exam every 3 days. I silently sighed, folded the textbook that was cleaner than my own face, and casually tossed it into the pile of books on the floor to my left. I had to dig through that pile just to find this book, and it turned out to be useless anyway. Violet. The teacher called her name. As always, she stood up, walked to the podium, and accepted the stack of exam papers from the homeroom teacher's hands. She counted them once and began handing them out to the students in the first row. After distributing them, she smoothed down her clothes and returned to her seat, sitting perfectly straight. She tore a sheet of scratch paper from the top edge of her textbook and held it down with her right hand. Most faces in the classroom looked gloomy, but only Violet and I maintained the same composure. Of course, she was calm because she believed in her own ability, while I was simply calm because I knew exactly what score I would get. I couldn't expect a useless student who had been out of school for many years like me to even write out a math test. Moreover, this was a math paper. The faint rustling of paper echoed in the classroom. Violet received the exam paper from the student in front of her, hearing that student call her a study goddess and asked to soak up some of her luck. She only offered a gentle smile. When she lifted her elbow, her uniform sleeve slid down accordingly, revealing a stretch of arm so white it was dazzling. The sound of the papers being passed grew closer and closer toward me. Only then did I realize that I had been staring blankly at her again. Unable to resist, I swung my hand and slapped my right cheek. The pain on my face seemed to force me to pull my gaze, which was stuck on her back, away. I looked up to check the progress of the paper distribution, guessing it was about to be my turn. I calculated the distance. extended 2 fingers to the side of the desk in front of me, and looking at the burn scar on my index finger, I instinctively reached into my pocket. Sure enough, I pulled out a lighter and half a pack of cigarettes. In my past life, I hadn't learned much useful stuff in school, but I had picked up quite a few bad habits. The papers were still rustling their way down, but unexpectedly, the student in front of me turned back and whispered to me, "That's the last one." After saying that, he immediately turned back and buried his head in solving the exam. "I swear, it's the last one? That's great. What idiot would want to do this thing anyway?" Heh. I hadn't even had a few seconds to feel happy before I felt the homeroom teacher's eyes flick over in my direction. As soon as he saw my desk was empty, his eyebrows immediately furrowed tightly. His face, which was already full of distress, became even more severe to the point where I wanted to step up and help him smooth out those wrinkles. But thinking about how he made a fortune playing the stock market in the previous life, and would later walk with an air of swagger, I immediately dismissed that thought. Let him frown. Anyway, he doesn't have many years left to frown. Nothing will bother him anymore later on. I curved the corners of my lips, flashing him a bright, good boy teenage smile. The result was that his eyebrows furrowed even tighter, his expression as if he had seen a living ghost. The smile on my lips instantly dropped, but unexpectedly, his expression immediately returned to normal, even looking like he sighed in relief. What's going on? In my past life, I was at most just disliked studying. I didn't do anything too outrageous. The worst I did was successfully pursue the student the teacher cherished the most in the grade, the talented valedictorian they had personally guided. Thinking about this, the air inside my chest deflated, my head drooped, and my eyelids lowered. Violet, in this life, she will no longer be involved with a pathetic wretch like me. I was sitting here lamenting my fate, sinking into a mood of self-healing, when an uninvited guest unexpectedly appeared in front of me. A blank white exam paper made my brain ache. I followed that lightly gloved finger upwards, just meeting Violet's emotionless eyes. She said, "I'll do this one first." She was going to ask for an extra copy. Her high ponytail lightly brushed the back of her neck. She slightly bowed her head, her long lashes drooping like butterfly wings, and my heart gave a sudden thump. The hand supporting my head also unconsciously dropped. I finally remembered exactly when I had returned. It was precisely the moment when Violet's equal kindness toward all her classmates opened up the bond between us in the past life. In the past life, I took this paper, scribbled all over it, my head filled only with Violet's name. Later, Violet's life was truly ruined by an uneducated bum like me. Just as she was about to turn and leave, I suddenly sprang up, making a choice completely opposite to the previous life. I grabbed the paper, stuffing it straight back into her hand, accidentally brushing her palm. Oh my, it's really soft, exactly the same feeling as when I touched it in the past life. I pretended to let out a contemptuous snort, one hand tucked into my pants pocket, avoiding Violet's stunned gaze, and then provocatively lifted my eyes to look at the homeroom teacher on the podium. "I can't write it anyway, too lazy to even try," I dropped a line full of style. Because the commotion was quite loud, not a few students who were diligently working on the test turned their heads to sneak a peek at me. I was like a completely different world from these obedient students. But it was that very irrelevant difference that held a strange appeal to them. That's why, even though my grades were utterly terrible in the previous life, many young girls still had a crush on me. There was no way around it. Girls at that age are easily fascinated by bad boy students like me. Violet was still standing rooted to the spot, unable to react immediately, and combined with her dark-rimmed glasses, it made her whole demeanor look adorably clumsy. God, she's so cute I could die. I swallowed hard, afraid that if I looked any longer, I would lose control. I instantly turned my head away. Just then, the homeroom teacher was so angry his eyes were bloodshot. I strode straight out of the classroom. I might be bad at studying, but my character isn't flawed. Although I don't study, I can't let my behavior affect others. Reaching the door, I naturally raised my hand and waved at the teacher, as if saying goodbye. No wonder I managed to win Violet over in the past life. With this damn charm of mine, it truly is hard to resist. I walked out the classroom door, with my head held high. The homeroom teacher's eyes, like headlights, followed me all the way out into the hallway. I took a detour to the head dean's office. After walking back and forth for a while, I covered my face and headed toward the school gate. Before I had fully stepped outside, the security guard stopped me. I looked down and remembered I was still wearing the uniform. I stood there arguing with the guard for a long time, saying all sorts of sweet and polite words. He still wouldn't let me leave. That wooden stick was even blocking my neck. Left with no choice, I glanced at his fingers, stained yellow from tobacco, and pulled a cigarette from my pocket, deliberately lighting it and extending it toward his mouth. Then, while he was still stunned, I flicked my wrist, throwing the cigarette away, tracing a perfect arc. The cigarette landed straight onto the newspaper on the guard's desk, a perfect shot. 3 clean points. I took advantage of the moment the security guard lifted his teacup to extinguish the smoldering ashes. In the brief instant he looked up, he saw nothing but the trail I left behind as I ran far away. After running a short distance, I turned back to look at the teaching building standing tall among the high-rises. I pressed my index and middle fingers together and placed them on my forehead. Goodbye, my youth. All right. Step 1 of the moon plan has been perfectly executed. The sky looked as if an artist had covered it with a light wash of color. The roadside shops were opening one after another, and the breakfast stalls were steaming hot. The delicious smell spread everywhere, a scent wafting right into my nose. My stomach clenched. Only then did I realize I hadn't eaten breakfast yet. I turned all my jacket and pants pockets inside out and managed to scrape together exactly $2.50. I truly was dirt poor when I was young. Forget it. The more important thing now is the towering high-rise building. It's been so long since I've been back that I can't remember where my rat hole is located. I had to struggle to dig up faint memories to retrace my path. The alley was very narrow, with dense vegetation on both sides. The branches of the old pagoda tree hung low, lightly brushing the shoulders of passers-by. That's right, this is the old, dilapidated apartment complex. The plaster was peeling off the walls, and I could even see some of my childhood graffiti on them. I ran straight up the stairs, looked at the rotting wooden door in front of me, took a deep breath, and raised my foot to kick it open. I only heard a loud thump, and my entire foot went numb with stinging pain. Oh God, that hurts so much. Hiss, hiss, hiss. I hugged my leg, gritting my teeth and enduring for a few seconds, then looked at the peeling door, covered in splinters, but the lock was inexplicably sturdy. I frowned, I kicked it. Why didn't it seem so tough before? Fortunately, the commotion was loud enough to wake up the drunk inside. I heard fumbling sounds in the room, and I lightly pressed my tongue against my inner teeth. When the old man opened the door and saw it was me, a look of surprise was evident on his alcohol-soaked face. He squinted at the sky outside. "What are you back for?" he asked with an annoyed voice, then casually picked up the wine bottle beside him and took another large gulp. I glanced at the mess inside the house, pushed him aside, and walked straight into my room. Although my room was a mess, it was almost neat compared to the outside. I flipped the mattress and blanket over and slid my hand underneath. Sure enough, there was nothing there. So, the small amount of money I hid in my past life was indeed taken by him for liquor at this very time. I let out a self-mocking laugh, letting go of my hand. The thin mattress sprang back, kicking up dust from under the bed. "You little punk, you hid money in the house. Did you think you could fool me?" He sprawled out on the sofa, knocking a pile of clothes onto the floor, shaking the wine bottle proudly. That flushed face made me want to vomit. My 5 fingers clenched tightly, hurting down to my palms. I realized I had unconsciously stepped up in front of him. "Get out of here." Before he could finish his sentence, I violently squeezed his chin, applying so much force that he was forced to open his mouth, his face filled with panic. Before he could even curse out any vulgarity, I didn't hesitate for a second, snatching the wine bottle from his hand. The motion was rough and decisive. The wine in the bottle was violently shaken, foam bubbling up layer after layer. I tilted my wrist. The amber stream of alcohol poured out like a floodgate opening, all of it ruthlessly going straight into his mouth. His eyes were wide like brass bells, and a gurgling sound came from his throat. He wanted to break free, but he was completely no match for me. In fact, my strength had surpassed his a long time ago. "Where's the money? The money you took to buy liquor?" I ground out the question before letting go so he could breathe again. "You bastard, how dare you treat your father like this?" The old man was so angry he scrambled up from the floor, raising his hand to slap my face, but he had drunk too much and couldn't stand steadily. As soon as he lurched up, he tumbled back down. The alcohol on his hands was sticky, and the strong smell of cheap liquor made my stomach twist. I was too lazy to argue with a useless person like him. I stepped straight forward, grabbed his hair, and poured the remaining liquor in the bottle into his mouth. The liquor spilled out from the corners of his mouth, dripping onto his shirt, leaving dark stains. It was then that he realized the difference in strength between us. Survival instinct overcame his aggression. His fingernails clawed at my hand, leaving a few red marks. Through his bloodshot, liquor-soaked eyes, I saw a version of myself that was both cold and frantic. I bent down, forcing him to face me, my voice icy cold. I asked again, "Where's the money?" He looked at me with a look of strangeness, and I tightened my grip. Only then did he react, reflexively reaching into his shirt. So that's where he hid it. I let go of his hair, ripped his shirt open, and finally pulled out a few red bills, scattered and insignificant in amount. I glanced at the wine bottles rolling around on the floor, and a familiar sense of helplessness welled up inside me. That was the sound of my pain when I was a teenager. That choked cry was later buried in numbness, and I no longer felt anything. When I married Violet, he even had the nerve to want to attend the celebration. I outright refused. Other people might not know, but I fully understood his intentions. He only hoped to collect the wedding gift money. I stood up, coldly looking down from above at the old man scratching his head and clumsily trying to get up. I didn't want to stay for another second, turned around, slammed the door shut, and left. I ignored his curses echoing behind me, treating them as wind passing through my ears. I ran a distance, and the scenery on both sides of the road became more and more familiar. My agitated heart gradually calmed down, especially when I looked up and saw the faint shadow of the moon in the sky. My heart felt even more peaceful. I just kept looking up at the sky, gazing for a long time. The moment I snapped back to reality, a dark shadow pinned me to the ground. Ouch! "Security guard, aren't you supposed to be watching the gate? What are you doing out here?" He didn't say a word, only locked me tightly in his arm. My heart skipped a beat, a bad premonition rising. I turned my head to look beside me. Just as I thought, the homeroom teacher's face was as green as iron. Next to him stood another person who also looked familiar. It wasn't until they escorted me back to the school office that I remembered who that person was. That was my head dean, Mr. Smith. "Sebastian, you. The dean was so furious that he pointed at me for half a minute without being able to utter a complete sentence. Hearing that name again after all these years, I was slightly stunned. The old man who named me was truly as reckless as a dog chewing on random things. Even on the day he registered my birth, he was half drunk. Eventually, the official at the registry office found it so offensive that they helped me pick that strange name. That's why, after Violet and I became close in the past life, I shamelessly pleaded with her to give me a new name. She was smart and knowledgeable. It took her several days to come up with that name, which was naturally wonderful beyond discussion. As for the name Sebastian, I had long since thrown it into some corner, not bothering to remember it. I sat properly in front of them, waiting for this three-person interrogation. Watching Dean Mr. Smith's mouth constantly moving, I gradually felt hazy, and my eyelids started drooping. I secretly let out a yawn, turning my head away in boredom, and coincidentally met the homeroom teacher's gaze. I even smiled cheekily at him. Unexpectedly, his eyes widened, looking as if they might pop out and stick onto my face. It's unclear how much time passed. Dean Mr. Smith had coaxed me until his voice was hoarse. Seeing that I wasn't reacting, he stood up and took a tired sip of water. I felt the time was ripe, so I stood up, smoothed the paper in front of me, and placed it back on the desk. "Sirs, I've decided to drop out of school." As soon as I finished speaking, the dean's eyelids twitched violently, and his eyes looked like they wanted to shoot fire. The glass in his hand made a crack sound. "Sebastian." His voice noticeably sharpened. I nodded and replied very properly, "Yes, that's me." Dropping out requires a parent's signature. It's not done by just scribbling on a piece of scratch paper. I pretended to understand and nodded. Under the puzzled gazes of the dean and the homeroom teacher, I picked up a pen and, with a flourish, signed my father's name in one fluid motion. After signing, I pushed the paper toward them. The two were silent for a few seconds, then their breathing grew much heavier. I don't have a mother. My father is an alcoholic who has never cared about me. As soon as they heard this, the look in their eyes immediately changed. The dean's lips, which were preparing to scold, softened considerably. If you drop out, what will you do afterward? I replied softly, start a business, of course. I've figured out the direction. They advised me on a lot more, but this time their attitude was much gentler. I didn't listen to a single word, in one ear and out the other, dragging the conversation until the atmosphere stiffened. In the end, it was still me, the generous one, who proactively eased the tension, taking the withdrawal form from the dean's hand. Under their sympathetic gazes, I looked as if I remembered something, licked my lips cunningly, and then suddenly dropped to my knees right at their feet. Sirs, teachers, please, could you lend me a little money? I beg you. People who are educated truly haven't seen a person as shameless as me. The result was that, relying on my glib tongue, I successfully managed to squeeze out a $20 bill. I walked out the school gate excitedly, waving at the junk collector outside the gate, telling him to wait for me. Then, under the watchful eye of the security guard, I brazenly returned to the classroom. The pop quiz had long been finished by now. The students were chirping away, complaining about how difficult the test was. When they saw me walk in, the whole class went silent for a beat. Sebastian, where did you run off to? A kind-hearted classmate asked me. I shrugged, indicating it wasn't important, and didn't answer immediately but walked to my spot. I took off my uniform jacket, pulled all the books and notebooks out of my desk, and stuffed them inside. When I couldn't stuff any more, I selected the clean ones, throwing the books that had almost never been written or drawn in onto the desk. Sebastian, what are you doing? My desk mate in front of me suddenly spoke up, a hint of genuine worry in his voice. Violet also paused her pen, turning around to look at me with eyes full of suspicion. I saw a brand new set of practice problems pinned under her hand. She was like that, naturally gifted yet harder working than anyone else. I didn't dare turn my head to look at her. Under the gaze of the entire class, I spoke honestly and directly. I'm about to drop out. These books are still new. Whoever needs them, feel free to take them. The class immediately buzzed with noise, which was not surprising. They were all good students. Dropping out was nothing short of an absurdity in their eyes. I didn't pay attention to the murmurs, gathered the two sleeves of the uniform, and hoisted the whole bag onto my shoulder. Through the corner of my eye, I could still sense Violet looking at me with disapproval. I had only taken a few steps when I suddenly remembered something, so I jumped onto the podium, grinning as I spoke to the class. You guys are all good students. You absolutely must study hard. Remember to use me as a negative example, especially you, Violet. Just keep being your model student self. Your future is definitely bright. In the past life, I was the one who shamelessly clung to her. Although she did like me, that thin layer of hesitation never broke through. It wasn't until I followed her to the university city to work odd jobs and pursued her for over a year that we officially got together. Thinking back, the reason she condescended to notice me was largely because, during that final year of pressure and boredom, an interloper like me suddenly appeared. She mistook the novelty of youth for genuine affection. The top student in the grade paired with the student who ranked last. That kind of couple was perfect fodder for teenage gossip. I finished speaking and turned around to see the homeroom teacher looking at me with pained eyes. Well, it figures. People with high responsibility like them are like that. Even when the worst student in the grade wants to drop out, they still feel regret. I thought for a moment, approached the door, leaned in close to the teacher's ear, and quickly said, "You can use me as a negative example all you want later. I promise I won't sue you for image infringement." His eyebrows furrowed, looking like he was about to grab a set square and swat my butt. But I anticipated it, took off like a shot, and vanished. Carrying that big bag, I reached the school gate and was instantly stopped by the security guard using the stainless steel pitchfork. I showed him the application form and brazenly walked through the gate. I sold all the books wrapped in the uniform jacket to the junk collector. "Kid, are you really dropping out?" the security guard asked with concern. I was counting the heap of change and bills, over $20. I waved my hand without looking back. "No more studying. It's not for me." After saying that, I brought my index and middle fingers together and waved them toward the school behind me, as a final farewell. This time, I truly severed all ties with Violet. According to the original trajectory of her life, our paths will surely not cross in this lifetime. That's for the best. I tightly gripped the large sum of money stuffed into my waistband, walked around a large area of the city, and finally found the starting point for my career. I pulled out a few red bills, shouting loudly, "Boss, the second phase of my moon plan officially begins." That evening, I timed my visit and went back home. Just as expected, the old man had run off to get drunk again. I casually tidied up the house and left without hesitation. Taking a long, deep breath, I started wandering the streets, conveniently scouting out where my business empire should begin. Wandering like that, night fell without me realizing it. I bit into the bun in my hand, considering dinner handled. Who said I was broke now? After scouting one area, I suddenly slammed on the brakes, pressing myself against the wall at the street corner. I waited until I saw Violet rushing home, clutching her bag, before stepping out from behind the wall, staring intently at her stretched-out backpack and the uniform that showed signs of being tugged. My eyes were full of calculation. Violet always took extremely good care of her books and belongings. Seeing this situation, I frowned, scooped up a handful of dirt from the road, tucked the rotting wooden stick behind my waistband, and rushed straight into the alley she had just exited. The moment I stepped in, I ran right into three guys with dyed blonde hair. One look, and I knew they were even worse students than I was. Seeing Violet's pink backpack thrown on the ground, I understood immediately. She had just been robbed. Damn it, those three bastards. They saw me too. They tossed the cigarette in their hand, appraised the uniform on me, and then whistled mockingly. They probably thought I was easy prey too. I pulled out the cigarette I had forgotten to throw away from my pocket, held it up, and walked toward them with a wide grin. They thought I was going to be reasonable. I immediately flung the dirt in my hand at them. While they were bending down, rubbing their eyes, cursing, and stumbling around, I pulled out the wooden stick from behind my back and relentlessly started beating them. In my past life, ever since I met Violet, I stopped getting into fights. Because the person I loved didn't like it. Getting back into a fight after all these years, my skills are definitely a bit rusty. God, that cost me quite a bit of energy. I felt the cut at the corner of my lip and ran for my life. I tried to take a shortcut and accidentally stepped on a dog, which chased me down the entire street. But thanks to the dog, I actually arrived beneath her apartment building sooner. I conveniently placed her backpack right where she would walk through. Seeing Violet pick up the backpack, I didn't say a word, turned around and bolted. Touching the wound by the corner of my mouth, I looked up at the hazy, smoke-like sky and walked away satisfied. According to my meticulous calculations, I finally chose to invest my startup capital at the intersection near a high school. This location was both crowded and convenient for traffic. If I had to make a quick escape, I could zip away on my motorized tricycle. But I really didn't expect to run into the homeroom teacher here. I handed him a grilled hot dog, purposely making it extra spicy, considering it thanks for his initial shareholder contribution. Seeing him hesitate, I flat out shoved the hot dog into his hand and hurriedly turned to serve a customer. People came and went in waves. The small stall was busy one moment and deserted the next. In a brief lull, I glanced over and saw the homeroom teacher looking like he wanted to say something but held back. I shoved a super spicy hot dog into my own mouth. "You mean to tell me that this is what you call a startup?" he asked softly, afraid of saying the wrong thing and hurting my small sense of self-esteem. His lips were reddened all around by the hot dog spice, yet I remained perfectly composed. Conversely, his complicated expression made it look as if I were doing something shady. "Don't look down on this small stand. It brings in quite a bit of money every day. I'll pay back all your money sooner or later." As I spoke, I even smacked my lips a few times. Worthy of being the future snack industry tycoon. This super spicy hot dog is truly excellent. The homeroom teacher wiped the sweat beading from the heat, then shook his head dismissively. After hesitating for a long time, he finally asked the question on his mind. Are you sure you're not going back to school? No studying. What can I do after studying? With my abysmal grades, I couldn't even find a job. Better to get out and earn money early. As I cleared the grill tray, I looked at the deserted stand, full of doubts. This is usually rush hour. Why is no one coming near my stall today? While I was pondering, I wiped the oil off my hands and continued. Most importantly, I don't have money for tuition. The money I secretly saved up washing dishes before, I stupidly hid it at home, and the old man cleaned me out. In the past life, I still had a student mindset, stubbornly staying in school even though I couldn't study, and I was frustrated about this for ages. This life, I'm enlightened. I can look at anything with a clear perspective. I wiped my face, looked down at my appearance, and glanced at the students who occasionally looked in my direction, feeling even stranger. Why isn't anyone buying anything? As I was thinking, I inadvertently noticed the homeroom teacher standing there, lips pursed, his face stern. I immediately understood where the problem lay. Without asking if he liked it or not, I shoved another hot dog into his hand. Sebastian, I'm not taking it. If you don't take it, I won't have any customers. Before the teacher could react, a crowd of students suddenly surged toward the stall. Only then did he realize that it was his own authority that had scared the kids away. It's true, students are born to fear their teachers. Just then, another customer arrived. I was instantly busy accepting money, my hands and feet chaotic. Catching sight of the teacher still standing there, I casually asked, "How did the class do on the last pop quiz?" "Oh, fine. Maintaining good form." Hearing that I still cared about my classmates, the homeroom teacher was visibly moved, holding the super spicy hot dog high in his hand. My heart softened a little too. I didn't expect him to actually help me draw customers. I pretended to ask further. "Still violet at the top?" "No need to ask. Violet is naturally number one, steady as a rock, there's no doubt about it." The teacher's voice was full of pride. I couldn't help but nod at the sound of it. That's right, Violet, always excellent like that. If she hadn't married me in the past life, hadn't been held back by me and the children, she should have been standing somewhere very high, where people would look up to her. The oil on the grill sizzled, and a splash of hot oil stung my hand. I looked at the packed crowd of students in front of me and suddenly reacted. "Sir, today isn't the weekend. Aren't you supposed to be teaching today?" The teacher saw me busy working alone and offered his free hand to help collect money. "No need. The 12th grade went mountain climbing today. We just got back. I just walked a little faster." The teacher said with a sigh of realization, "These students are too weak now. They walk slower than this old man." Hearing that, my heart skipped a beat, and a bad feeling surged up. As soon as I looked up, I saw the homeroom teacher cheerfully waving toward the distance. The oil from the hot dog dripped down, covering his hand. I followed the direction he waved, and a long line of students appeared before my eyes. With just a glance, I instantly spotted Violet in the crowd. She was bending her head, chatting quietly with the friend next to her, the corner of her lips slightly curved, her expression rarely this relaxed. I quickly lowered my head, focusing intently on working the stand to appear accustomed to it. Until an impatient customer called out to me, I ducked even lower, genuinely wanting to crawl right into the grill. "Students, come over here, this way." The homeroom teacher's voice boomed, instantly attracting all eyes. I gritted my teeth and glared at the teacher. To my surprise, he raised his eyebrows and looked back at me smugly. "Oh, look who it is, Sebastian. Long time no see. Actually, it's a bit strange without you in class." "Humph." I forced out a standard, overly polite merchant smile that said nothing. With me gone, the average score at the bottom of the grade must have gone up quite a bit. The homeroom teacher patted my shoulder and grandly waved his hand. "Today, I'm treating the whole class to hot dogs. Put it on my tab. Take as many as you want. Just tell Sebastian. Wow, the homeroom teacher is awesome. Thank you, sir, and thank you, Sebastian. I don't know who in the crowd shouted that, but it immediately prompted a chorus of other thanks. Someone who didn't know the full story would surely think I had donated a building to the school. I secretly looked over at Violet, catching her curiously glancing around. I immediately retracted my gaze and directed it towards the youthful faces in front of the stall, releasing a wide, bright smile. Don't be shy, you're all classmates. How could I take money from anyone? Everything is free, take as much as you want. Wow, you're so cool. Yeah, you're so kind. The homeroom teacher looked like he was about to say something. I quickly snatched the hot dog from his hand and shoved it straight into his mouth. The students were both enthusiastic and embarrassed. The ones who had money insisted on pressing it into my hand. I couldn't stop them. The ones who didn't bring money were both tempted and embarrassed to take it for free, so in the end, I put my money pouch away and personally handed hot dogs to each one. If someone was too shy, I just shoved it directly into their mouth. Simple and effective. To be honest, I may have been a terrible student, but I have a lot of affection for students. They are all simple, with no wicked intentions. In a flash, even with the homeroom teacher helping, I was completely swamped. I looked over at the crispiest, golden hot dog on the right, carefully picked it up, spread a layer of ketchup, and gently sprinkled a bit of chili powder on top. Violet, this one is for you. Just mentioning her name, I felt my heart grow warm. Violet looked slightly surprised, a smile lighting up her eyes. She took the hot dog from my hand. She was never good with spicy food, but always craved it. In the past life, every time I went out to eat with her, I always had to order one spicy and one non-spicy portion. Oh wow, Violet, this hot dog looks gorgeous. Really? Violet took a bite, squinting her eyes from the chili powder and unconsciously sticking out her tongue. I pretended to be surprised. There you go, Violet. Consider yourself lucky. You're welcome. Her eyebrows completely relaxed like a blooming flower. Behind those dark-rimmed glasses, her eyes sparkled brightly. In the past life, I particularly liked to tease her. Whenever she was tired from studying, I would secretly take off her glasses and kiss her brow and the corners of her eyes, gazing at her hazy eyes, holding her tightly in my arms. Right now, Violet was very happy, but the moment her gaze met mine, it was as if she'd been burned. She quickly pulled it back. A few streaks of red faintly spread behind her ears. I looked down at myself, then understood. Today, I was only wearing a white tank top, casually tying a long-sleeved shirt around my waist. The outline of my muscles was slightly exposed, and the grease on my stomach made the shirt cling to my skin. There was no other way. Wasn't it all for business competition? If it weren't for this look, my stall wouldn't sell much better than the ones next to it. Violet, you must study hard. Hearing me say that, she looked up at me and smiled faintly, a very slight smile carrying a hint of distant politeness. After that, I lowered my head to work, not daring to look up again. It wasn't until the homeroom teacher checked his watch and led the whole group of students away that I dared to look up, using a lingering gaze to trace Violet's retreating figure. Her high ponytail bounced behind her, her whole body exuding confidence, with absolutely no trace of the person who had suffered from postpartum depression. In the previous life, because my education was too low, I couldn't find a decent job, so I ran to the city where Violet attended university and set up a small stall. The top student scholar and the bottom-ranking bad student. This kind of story sounds romantic, but in reality, no one believed we could go the distance. Even I was often anxious. Because Violet was so excellent, she often came to the stall to help me after school. When she met classmates from her school, she would comfortably link arms with me, confidently introducing me as her boyfriend. I knew that even if they didn't say it out loud, they definitely thought in their hearts that it was a lotus flower planted in a pile of cow dung. Violet didn't care, but I didn't want her to suffer with me. I worked several jobs every day, trying to save every penny. Violet was very sensitive. She noticed I was acting strange, so she asked her family for a sum of money. I don't know how she persuaded her family, but when I saw her eyes red-rimmed, I could only grit my teeth, swearing that I would absolutely not let her suffer following a poor guy like me. I gathered all the savings from the jobs I worked, plus the money from Violet's family to rent an abandoned workshop. I was preparing to build my own production line for the super spicy hot dogs. Those years, Violet always told me I was living too hard. She felt sorry for me, but I didn't feel hardship at all. On the contrary, the more I lived, the more hopeful I felt. That was my and Violet's hope, the hope for our future. Unexpectedly, by taking a leap of faith, I genuinely made a bit of a name for myself. Afterward, Violet went to graduate school. Her tuition, and even the initial research funding she had to cover, were all drawn from the joint bank card in our names. Our lives were proceeding very smoothly. While Violet was in grad school, we got married. The property certificates were all registered in her name and her parents' names. After all, I only had that old father, and I couldn't let him benefit. But just when Violet was preparing to go straight into her PhD, she discovered she was pregnant. That was the crystallization of our love. After discussing it with me, Violet decided to have the child. She began staying home to carry the baby. Her PhD studies had to be postponed. My factory ran into trouble due to online rumors about the ingredients of the super spicy hot dogs. The products wouldn't sell, piling up in the warehouse. During that time, I was busy to the point of nearly going crazy. Violet often felt sad that she couldn't share the family burden. She secretly hid from me to cry alone. Later, Violet gave birth to our daughter but suffered from postpartum depression. It was then that I truly realized how terrifying mental illness could be. I regretted countless times. As her husband, why didn't I notice sooner? Although Violet was always so thoughtful, she was afraid of worrying me, always forcing a smile, but I knew very well they were all fake smiles. The factory's difficulties left her powerless, her research was forced to be interrupted, and first-time motherhood left her flustered. All of it compounded, forcing her to become a housewife. Violet, someone who was so brilliant, was reluctantly trapped at home, like a rose in full bloom, slowly withering. Afterward, I thought about it for a long time, and finally understood. The bright moon hangs high, its silvery light pure. A good person like Violet should never be bound by family, never locked down by the title of wife. She should be Violet herself and only Violet. Not anyone's wife, not anyone's mother. My heart longed for the distant moon, sighing only because the distance was too great. Violet, she should never have been ruined by me in the first place. The figures of the students gradually disappeared. I stood rooted to the spot, watching their backs full of vitality. Boss, 1 grilled hot dog. A customer handed me $3. I accepted it warmly. Asking him what flavor he wanted, I kept busy until nightfall. Just as I was preparing to pack up, I saw the old man walking toward me, clutching a bottle of liquor, and even tipping his head back for a long gulp, as if boosting his morale. I was slightly surprised and raised an eyebrow. I didn't expect this man, who was drunk like a zombie all day, to find his way here. I was even more surprised that he came so late. You scoundrel, how dare you sell the stuff from the house? I've given you too much face, haven't I? He propped one hand on the handlebar of the cart. He seemed intent on flipping over my beloved cart. Ridiculous. Did he think that because there were a lot of people here, I wouldn't dare touch him? That's truly laughable. When she went to the provincial capital for university, neither of us saw each other again. That's truly good. Violet's brilliant life has finally begun. The days continued to pass little by little. It had been 2 years, 3 months, and 5 days since I last saw Violet. To be honest, I didn't want to remember it that precisely, but the number just pops into my head automatically, as if I'm inherently faster at remembering than others. Sometimes I even thought I had awakened some incredible ability. The result was that I borrowed some review materials from students to check. Oh my God, my eyes went black. I really have no aptitude for studying. Boss, 1 grilled hot dog. It was that familiar voice again. My hand quickly added mustard and extra spice. With one hand, I accepted the money. With the other, I handed over the hot dog skewer. Seeing the homeroom teacher sniffing and gasping for breath from the spiciness, I laughed and opened a bottle of water for him. Homeroom teacher, you're truly amazing. How do you find me no matter how many times I change my selling spot? I've been avoiding meeting Violet for the past few years, always changing locations during holidays. Yet you always seem to have GPS, never missing once. The homeroom teacher glanced at me proudly, patting his slightly protruding beer belly. That's called skill. I chuckled lightly, looking at the teacher's gradually thinning hair on top of his head, and couldn't resist reminding him. You're getting older too. Eat fewer greasy, heavily salted things like this, or you'll risk high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and high blood sugar. The result was that the teacher waved his hand dismissively. I could only shrug helplessly and see off another customer. I pulled out a small red velvet box from inside my shirt. The homeroom teacher's eyelids twitched, and his eyes clearly showed surprise and delight. Is that for me? Who else? It was Teacher's Day the other day. I was afraid that a bottom-ranking student like me giving a gift would embarrass you, so I didn't dare show up. Now I'm making up for the late gift. Oh goodness, this child. Listen to you talk. The teacher quickly finished the hot dog in his hand, vigorously wiping his hands on his clothes before accepting my gift. A fountain pen. Hair, I like this one. He smiled so broadly that the few thinning strands of hair on his head looked like they wanted to spring up and dance. I could only look surprised. It's just a small gift, but it makes you this happy. What's wrong? Did the other students not bring you anything? Of course they did. But you know, intention counts for more than anything. I pretended to nonchalantly wipe the grill, subtly steering the conversation towards Violet. As soon as I mentioned the name Violet, his former star student, the homeroom teacher immediately brightened up. Violet? I heard she's doing great in college too. Oh well, of course. Violet is excellent. She's #1 at everything. He. Naturally. I really didn't understand why a math teacher insisted on fighting with these English words. The teacher held the pen, turning it around and examining it. Finally, he squinted, scrutinizing the English inscription on the pen body. His tongue twisted several times in his mouth, still unable to pronounce any coherent words. I noticed the teacher suddenly turning his back, concealing something. Could he be so moved that he wanted to cry? Just as I was about to tease him, he jumped up as if shocked by electricity, holding the pen as if it were a hot coal. Why is this pen so expensive? Are you crazy? Give it back right now, give it back. His right hand was trembling, and the screen of his phone was still on a shopping app interface. He fumbled, trying to shove the pen back into the box, but it didn't fit after several attempts. Just keep it, sir. You know, I haven't just been selling hot dogs these past few years. Based on my experience from the previous life, besides selling grilled food, I also dealt in a few other items. I'd say I was far ahead of the market. I saved up a decent sum quite early and rented a small workshop in the area. It's essentially following the path to wealth from my past life. Selling street food now is just a personal hobby. Besides, homeroom teacher, you've supported me through rain or shine all these years. Your little private fund must have suffered enough. Under my earnest pleading, the teacher finally accepted the pen, putting it into his pocket with relief. Thank you, Sebastian. I pouted helplessly, correcting him again. How many times have I told you? Call me Gilbert. Don't call me that rustic name anymore. The teacher felt the pen in his pocket, curved his lips, and hummed while shaking his head. Oh, Sebastian, Gilbert. Seeing the teacher deliberately twisting his voice like that, I couldn't help but shoot him a glare. The homeroom teacher plopped down onto the flower bed behind me, staying to chat with me and talk about random things. Why did you suddenly adopt such a literary name? I never saw you having an intellectual air before. It's a nice name, right? Violet gave it to me in the past life. Gilbert. God, just hearing it sounds so educated. The homeroom teacher nodded first, hesitated for 2 seconds, and then shook his head again. It sounds a bit like Alaska crap somehow. Alaska, you're not a local, are you? Your speech still carries a bit of an accent from another region. I turned around and looked at him with such a strange expression that he became slightly flustered. How did you know? In the past life, I begged Violet to give me a nice name. She thought about it for days, giving me many options. The name Gilbert was initially a joke from her to tease me because I never worried her. She often stroked my head and said, "Gilbert doesn't bother people." But I knew very well, Alaska, I knew everything that bothered Violet, I knew it all. He. So I immediately chose that name. Is there some unspoken understanding among people who have studied together? I looked at the sky and decided to pack up the stall immediately. I spread sauce on the remaining hot dogs, wrapped them in a bag, and handed them to the homeroom teacher. "This is a gift for your wife." Without waiting for him to pay, I jumped onto my beloved cart and drove off like the wind. I stopped the cart by the bridge, rummaging through my bag for the newly bought bag of dog food. Actually, I had moved out from under the bridge long ago, but the old blankets and pillows I wasn't using anymore. I conveniently arranged them into a dog's nest. I was about to call out to my precious pack of dogs, but before I even got close to the dog's nest, I saw the figure I longed for day and night standing there. Oh my God, why is Violet here? Startled, I quickly hid behind a tree trunk. Violet looked exactly like she did in the past life. Glasses removed, hair straightened, glowing with beauty. "Violet, don't be sad anymore. Your uncle will definitely be fine." Only then did I notice there was another girl next to Violet, squatting with her and playing with the puppies. Looking up, it was her best friend. I remember she was the one who wrote novels. I was so focused on Violet that I didn't see her there until now. I'll call this friend Alice. Violet lowered her head, a faint sadness quietly rising in her eyes. Her eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and it made my heart nearly break. I slapped my forehead, trying hard to recall what happened at this time in the past life. What exactly happened to my future father-in-law? In the previous life, Violet suddenly requested a long leave, rushing to leave school without clearly explaining it to me. At that time, my factory was just starting to stabilize. She insisted I had to look after it and wouldn't let me go with her. I had no choice but to transfer all the money in my card to Violet. Later, because I kept asking, she finally told me the truth. Her father had broken his leg. Violet's parents were ordinary factory workers. Her father climbed up and down every day, so an accident was bound to happen. I tightly furrowed my brow, my fingers unconsciously scratching the tree bark. Violet shook her head, stroked the small dog's side, and then left with her best friend Alice. Her shoulders were slightly slumped. I waited a few more minutes, making sure they had gone far away before daring to step out from behind the tree. Seeing me, their old acquaintance, the puppies immediately ran toward me. I poured food into their bowls, completely unfocused. I reached out to stroke the puppy's head. It still seemed to hold the warmth from Violet's palm. In the past life, even though my father-in-law broke his leg and the treatment costs were high, he refused to touch the money I gave Violet. He was afraid that if he used my money, his daughter would have to bow down to me. The person I love is so good, and her parents are just as good. In the end, I had to hide it from Violet, secretly giving the money to my father-in-law, telling him that I was here to repay a debt. It was to repay the money Violet had once borrowed from their family years ago. I even forged a loan agreement with interest. Under my sincere promises, my father-in-law stiffly nodded, finally not forgetting to warn me, "Don't you dare bully my daughter, or else I'll break your leg too." My in-laws were both honest people, the type who would rather sell their house than ask relatives for help. Thinking about this, I rubbed my head in distress. My adorable father-in-law, I truly cherish him. I suddenly slapped my forehead, immediately called a few contacts from the factory area, gave them some instructions, and sped off on my cart to the supermarket. I chose several expensive yet discreet gifts and drove straight to the homeroom teacher's house. What followed was an extremely proficient sliding kneel. I carried the gifts in both hands, hugging the teacher's legs and his wife's legs, not forgetting to politely greet their daughter-in-law. I don't have any other specialties, only this standout shamelessness. If it weren't for it, I wouldn't have married a beautiful flower like Violet in the past life. After I stated my request, the homeroom teacher immediately pouted. His tense expression vanished in a second, and he glared at me helplessly. "Sebastian, why didn't you just say straight out that it was such a small matter? You startled me. I thought you were asking me to help with some sort of embezzlement." He. All right, that matter is settled. My adorable father-in-law. Your son-in-law, no, the son-in-law from your previous life, is here to save you from dire straits. I left the gifts and some of the new hot dogs from the factory at the homeroom teacher's house. Then, just as I was about to leave, I looked at the teacher's young son and kindly advised him. Study hard, kid, or you'll end up like your uncle. Before I could finish my sentence, the homeroom teacher kicked me out the door. The security door slammed shut with a bang, mercilessly closing. I looked at the large, Chinese-style character for blessing fuck on the door and once again felt admiration for the homeroom teacher. He was such a good person, even when being a bad example, he couldn't bear to use all his strength. I told him not to worry about copyright. Honestly. But regarding Violet's situation, I still felt uneasy. She has a strong personality, she likes to shoulder everything herself. She must be going through a lot these days. I used my brain, which had never taken a college entrance exam, to calculate for a while, then slapped my thigh. I secretly sneaked off to the house of her best friend who was currently on leave from school. Cough. In the previous life, I knew this friend liked to stay glued to her house, but I didn't realize she was this glued to it. I waited all day. Finally, I saw her come downstairs. I immediately zipped up my jacket high, covering half my face, and looked down, pretending to play on my phone. Wow, the amusement park is giving away free balloons, and the Ferris wheel is free too. Wow, something this good probably only happens once in a lifetime. Seeing her best friend Alice's expression remain completely blank, I quickly ducked into the hallway. I took off my jacket, turned it inside out, and put it back on. Fortunately, I was smart and wore a reversible jacket. I rushed back next to Violet's best friend, pretending to be a passerby. Oh my god, they're giving away free balloons at the amusement park, and the Ferris wheel is free too. Wow, something this good probably only happens once in a lifetime. Seeing her best friend Alice's indifferent expression, I immediately darted into the hallway. I took off my jacket, flipped it to the other side, and put it back on. Fortunately, I was sharp enough to intentionally wear a reversible jacket. I ran close to her best friend Alice, continuing to pretend to be a stranger. Oh heavens, the amusement park has free balloons, and the Ferris wheel is free too. Oh dear, how often does something this good happen in a lifetime? I immediately took off my jacket again and pretended to walk past her best friend Alice. Oh my gosh, the amusement park has free balloons and a free Ferris wheel. It only happens once in a lifetime. You have to go with your best friend. I was about to risk running past her topless one more time when I heard Alice call Violet. Violet, want to go to the amusement park with me? The Ferris wheel is free today. It seemed Violet hadn't agreed yet, so her friend Alice immediately started whining. Please, Violet, just come with me once, okay? I'm begging you. I saw a clear look of triumph on her face, so I turned and ran upstairs. Perfect, the plan succeeded. But my joy didn't last long. A gust of wind blew past, and I immediately sneezed. Damn it, who's talking bad about me behind my back? I sniffled, putting my jacket back on. Based on Violet's habits, her makeup usually takes about 35 minutes, so I had plenty of time to leisurely head to the amusement park. But the moment my butt landed on the seat, I looked up and saw her best friend Alice coming downstairs, already changed. Oh God. I widened my eyes, only able to watch her hop onto a public bicycle and speed off ahead. I'm dead, I miscalculated. How sad must Violet be that she didn't even bother putting on makeup and rushed out. My heart felt crushed. I rolled up my sleeves and vigorously pedaled my beloved cart. When I saw her best friend Alice stop below Violet's apartment, I finally breathed a little easier, but my legs didn't dare stop. Truly worthy of being the warhorse that once conquered the market with me, I still managed to arrive more than 10 minutes ahead of them. I put on the mascot costume and stood in the center of the amusement park. One look and I located Violet. She was thinner than before, her hair simply pulled back, with slight dark circles under her eyes. I took large steps right up to her, holding the sunflower balloon I was tightly clutching in my left hand out to Violet, and didn't forget to push one into her best friend Alice's hand as well. Violet looked very surprised. Her eyes immediately lit up, and the corner of her mouth curved slightly. The sadness from before was gone. Thank you. She accepted the balloon, politely said a word, and walked past me. Her best friend Alice excitedly pulled her arm. See? Violet, I told you there were free balloons. Hurry, hurry. The Ferris wheel is free too. I pretended to hand out balloons, maintaining a safe distance as I followed the two of them, listening to her best friend Alice continuously comfort her. Violet, don't frown anymore. Didn't all your uncle's medical expenses get taken care of? Heaven still favors you too. Who knew that spot for the hot dog packaging the homeroom teacher brought would scratch off a grand prize? But I still feel like this is a bit strange. What is there to be scared of? The money was transferred, and it's totally real. Violet smiled softly, casually tying the sunflower balloon to her wrist. You're right. The heavens truly do favor me. After hearing their conversation, and having finished handing out all the balloons in my hand, my heart finally settled into a safe position in my chest. The homeroom teacher is truly trustworthy in getting things done. Hee hee. Coming up with this chameleon disguise trick, I truly am a genius. But my smugness only lasted a few seconds. Violet and her best friend Alice were already standing at the entrance to the Ferris wheel. While they were queuing, I stood behind them, vigorously winking at the staff member there. When it was their turn, the employee, who had already been paid, smiled brightly and quickly came to greet them. Wow, two beautiful ladies. Your luck is amazing. You happen to be the 100th customers this afternoon, so the Ferris wheel ride is free. After saying that, the employee put 2 flowers into Violet's hand. Sunlight pierced through the thin clouds, creating patches of dappled light, covering the ground with a gentle golden sheen. She lowered her head, softly smelling the vibrant flowers in her hand, the movement very slow and gentle, as if afraid of disturbing this unexpected gift. Violet's eyes were slightly closed, her face showing an indescribable peace. In the past life, every day I went to my stall, I would buy a flower for her to wear behind her ear. I bought them so often that the owner of the flower shop even recognized me. When we got married and I went to buy flowers, she gave me a 20% discount. Hee hee, I picked this flower myself. Violet will definitely like it. Hee hee. Violet linked arms with her best friend Alice and stepped onto the Ferris wheel, her eyes filled with a smile. She gently tilted her head, casually looking around the amusement park. I felt her gaze sweep past me, so I raised both hands above my head, forming a large heart shape. I think I saw Violet lightly tap her best friend Alice's hand, prompting her to look over. The Ferris wheel slowly rotated upwards. I quietly looked up, watching it turn revolution after revolution. In the past life, Violet and I formalized our relationship on this very Ferris wheel. Oh, Ferris wheel, please carry away all the sorrows of the one I love. The Ferris wheel gradually came to a stop. Violet and her best friend Alice walked down arm in arm, the loose strands of hair on Violet's forehead gently blown by the wind, mingling with the scent of the flowers around her. As they passed by me, I heard her best friend Alice say, "Violet, you're really lucky." I think so too. After that, Violet played several other games. I still stood not far from them, watching them play and take photos. The sun gradually set, and the light became softer. The sky was dyed a pale orange mixed with the colors of sunset. The light shone on the hem of Violet's clothes, constantly changing colors. Fortunately, there was always a smile on Violet's face, which kept the corners of my mouth curving upwards as well. When the two of them were tired and about to leave, I took out an instant camera, holding up a sign that read "Free Photos" on my chest. "It's you? Are you still here?" Violet smiled at me, pointing at the Ferris wheel. "I learned how to make a heart from you." "Yes, I'm still here." I nodded, holding the camera up for the two of them. Violet brought the flower up to her cheek. The sunlight passed through the gaps in the petals, shining on her face, creating a gentle halo around her, making her face even more tender and captivating. Looking at Violet through the lens, my heart involuntarily skipped a beat. I pressed the shutter, and the photo quickly printed out. In the picture, Violet was as beautiful as ever. Postpartum depression truly is a terrible torment for a person. In the previous life, after her illness, She could scream until her voice was hoarse over something very small. When she finally calmed down, she would cover her face and cry while apologizing to me. At that time, she smashed all the mirrors in the house because she couldn't accept her reflection, a distorted figure, a haggard face, and inexplicably feeling sad every day. "Thank you." Violet smiled at me, took the photo from my hand, and leaned her head close to her best friend Alice to whisper something. I turned and walked away, letting out a long sigh as I watched her back. Then I dragged my weary feet to the staff break room in the amusement park. The moment I took off the mascot costume, I immediately collapsed onto the floor. I sniffled, feeling like I was catching a cold. My head was spinning, and I could faintly hear Violet's voice calling my name. I hazily opened my eyes. When I saw that the person poking her head in was Violet, I sprang up like a coiled spring, quickly grabbing the headpiece of the mascot costume. Then I saw Violet walking towards me, full of joy. "Sebastian, long time no see." When she saw the mascot costume in my hand, the joy in her eyes became even more obvious. "So, you were the one wearing the mascot costume? No wonder I felt like I recognized you earlier." I immediately shook my head in denial. But before the words could even leave my mouth, the amusement park manager poked his head through the window. "Remember to return the mascot costume to its place when you're done, handsome boy. I work part-time here too." Looking at Violet's smiling eyes, I really couldn't think of any other excuse. I could only nod slightly. Putting the mascot costume back in its place, I didn't dare to look to see if she wanted to say anything else, and walked away immediately. Passing the doorway, I accidentally bumped into her best friend Alice's shoulder. "Sorry," I said quickly like the wind, and hurried out of the amusement park like someone fleeing a car. I walked a long distance before I dared to stop, slowly squatting down by the wall. I wiped away a tear that escaped my eye, then sniffled, let out a sneeze, and immediately ran home. I don't know how long Violet took leave, but I tried every way possible to avoid her. As a result, for a long period, I didn't dare to open my stall, which worried the homeroom teacher so much that he called me constantly for several days, asking if I had died somewhere. I truly give up. Can't he hope for me to live a little better? It wasn't until I secretly went to the hospital, waiting for the exact moment my future father-in-law was discharged, and luckily didn't run into Violet, that I dared to continue selling goods. The days that followed were quite peaceful, and I couldn't get any more information about Violet from the homeroom teacher. He really didn't know anything. My factory, meanwhile, was still doing well. Every day, I steadily opened my stall, packed up on time, and returned to the dog's den under the bridge to feed the little ones. In the evening, I would sit and smile foolishly at the moon. Life like this was actually not bad. Then, more than 2 years passed. Violet graduated from college. She is Violet. She was already too excellent, let alone in this life without the burden of me. Just like in the previous life, she was given special admission to straight into graduate school at her university. "Old teacher, you ran all the way out here in this cold weather to help watch my business. I want to cry." I rubbed my hands, red from the cold, handing a hot dog with extra ketchup and extra spice to the customer, who was bundled up in a down jacket like a ball, watching him struggle to take off his gloves to scan the code and pay me. "Of course, I consider myself your loyal fan now. Why don't you offer me a free meal?" "Wow, old teacher, are you still short of this little bit of money now? The money in your account is about to generate more interest." Hearing my flattery, the old teacher immediately tilted his chin proudly, took a bite of the hot dog, and sweat instantly broke out on his face. He ate half the hot dog, and seeing that I still hadn't said anything, he couldn't help but snort, opening the conversation himself. "Why aren't you gossiping about Violet today?" "Ha!" My eyes widened then. Looking at the old teacher's I knew it all along expression, I cautiously glanced around, pulled him closer, and lowered my voice to ask, "How did you know?" "Oh, you ask how I knew." The teacher pouted, rolling his eyes at me. "For so many years, every time you talk, you either allude to or mention Violet directly. Even a fool could see it." After saying that, he glanced at me again. "I'm genuinely worried that this cold weather will freeze your brain. You, with the little brain you had in school, trying to hide something from me. Keep dreaming." He threw the paper wrapper into the trash and opened his mouth to advise me. Violet is still single, you know. If you like her, go after her. I shook my head, staring blankly at the grill, silent for a long time. When I finally snapped back to reality and looked up, no one was in front of me. The teacher didn't even say goodbye. Did he really take my comment to heart? Do small-minded people really hold onto their money? I looked at the thick snowflakes falling from the sky. The snow grew heavier and slower. The whole world was dyed a pure white. The awning of the hot dog stand was covered with sparkling ice drips. I broke one off and played with it in my hand. In the past life, I loved using my freezing cold hands to rub against Violet's face, waiting for her to pretend to be angry before pulling open her down coat and hugging her tightly. My fingertips were red from the cold, and the ice cube in my hand was completely melted and smooth. I put my hand on the snow-covered awning, about to use force to retract it, when I unexpectedly saw a long-unseen acquaintance in front of me. Violet stood in the cold wind, tilting her head and smiling at me. She tugged at her scarf, revealing cheeks red from the cold. In just a few short seconds, a thin layer of snow had covered her head. "Violet, why are you?" Before I could even finish my surprise at her appearing here, I saw the snow on her hair. By the time I reacted, I was standing next to Violet, holding the awning up for her. Violet looked up at me, her eyebrows arched. She was wearing makeup, still beautiful as before. I felt my cheeks heat up slightly. Good heavens, it's freezing. The wind is cutting. Why did you run out without an umbrella? I nearly added a few more lines but managed to stop myself in time, swallowing the words. Violet looked at my snow-covered grill, then looked up at me again. The snow on her eyelashes had melted into droplets. She took a step closer toward me, and my heart stuttered. "I came to thank you." "Thank me for what?" I was bewildered. Violet adjusted the scarf draped over her arm, revealing her pale neck. "I came to thank the person who helped me get my bag of rice back. Thank the person who spent so much effort bringing medical expenses for my father. Thank the person who pretended to be a mascot to cheer me up. And thank the person who gave me flowers." She spoke in one long breath. With every sentence she uttered, my heart trembled. I dared not look into her eyes, immediately shifting my gaze elsewhere, staring blankly straight ahead. Violet tilted her head, and my eyes accidentally met hers again. "Is that so? You must have mistaken me for someone else." "Violet." Before I could finish my sentence, her best friend Alice materialized from an unknown corner, holding 2 umbrellas, looking exactly like she was possessed by a detective. She smirked, reached into her pocket, and pulled out an item. "Want to see the surveillance footage from the alley that day? Want to hear the amusement park manager's testimony? Or want to check the license plate number?" After saying that, she abruptly yanked the homeroom teacher, who was shrinking beside her, into view. "Need a witness?" My head was buzzing. I didn't know what to say for a moment, only managing to look at the teacher, who was avoiding eye contact. "Violet, you're overthinking it. I was just working there at the right time." "Oh my gosh, and he says she's overthinking." Her best friend Alice and the teacher spoke in unison, both pouting, with a clear expression on their faces that screamed, "I'd be a fool to believe you." As the two of them bantered back and forth, Violet, on the contrary, laughed. She looked over at me, directly into my eyes, slowly emphasizing each word. "Thank you." My lips fluttered for a long time, and finally, I awkwardly choked out a sentence. That. "Violet, don't overthink it, I need to go home." I placed the snow-sheltering awning on the ground and turned to flee. Unexpectedly, my wrist was suddenly grasped, held by Violet. I truly couldn't believe my pathetic lack of ambition. She only touched me once, and half my body went limp. Oh my God, her hand was still as soft as in my memory. Violet tried to pull me several times, discovering she couldn't budge me at all. She raised an eyebrow, then decisively stepped closer to me herself. She pouted slightly, looking a bit disappointed. I clearly wanted to pull my hand back, but my left arm seemed to disobey, unable to exert any strength. Just then, Violet suddenly looked up, lightly rose on her tiptoes, and her sparkling eyes locked onto mine. Do you want to try dating me? Such a direct question made my breathing hitch for half a beat. I wanted to open my mouth to refuse, but my head was terribly heavy, completely unable to move. I guessed I must have caught a cold again. I hadn't even finished thinking about what to say. Violet's eyes already showed a fleeting shadow of sadness. Based on my experience from the previous life, I knew Violet was pretending to be pitiful. Usually, at times like this, I would pinch her cheek and surrender with a smile. But that was, after all, a matter of the previous life. I looked at Violet in front of me, really wanting to expose her act, but my throat felt blocked, unable to utter a single word. Violet clasped her hands together, her carefully made-up face coming closer into my field of vision. Please, don't rush to refuse me, we can start by just getting to know each other. She completely denied me the chance to speak. After saying that, she extended her hand toward me. Hello, my name is Violet. I felt the hand hanging by my side trembling. In the end, it was the teacher who couldn't stand it anymore. He quickly stepped beside me, grabbed my hand, and pressed it into Violet's. Under Violet's expectant gaze, my throat felt tight. I spoke in a hoarse voice. My name is Gilbert. This name is really good, what else could it be? My wife gave it to me. Violet only had to lean slightly close to me like that, and my mind instantly went blank. What was more deadly was that she was also smiling at me. Oh God, it's a honey trap, I surrender. This trick really works. I kept dodging and retreating for ages. In the end, the teacher couldn't bear to watch any longer and slapped me on the head. What exactly are you worried about, kid? What am I worried about? I'm worried that I'm a lousy student, fundamentally unworthy of her. I'm worried I'll disrupt the academic ideals she wants to pursue. I'm worried Violet will suffer from postpartum depression again. After I finished rambling all these things, the teacher slapped my head one more time, hitting me until I was dizzy. Why are you so dramatic about being in love? I ask you, when you are with her, do you hurt her? No. I quickly looked up at Violet, who was slowly walking toward me. A string in my mind seemed to snap. I pushed the teacher aside, rushed a few steps to stand in front of Violet, and anxiously demanded an answer. Violet, do you want to get married? Violet's face immediately flushed bright red, beautiful enough to take one's breath away. Her lips subtly moved, and she whispered, Yes, I do. Hearing this, I became even more agitated. So what if someone treats you badly? What if someone dares to bully you? What if you feel unwell during pregnancy? Violet's eyes darted around, subtly glancing at the teacher who was winking signals at her. She immediately played along, her face showing a hint of worry as she asked me, Then what should we do? Yes, what should we do now? I was so flustered that I rubbed my hands back and forth. Just thinking about the possibility of Violet being bullied by someone made me furious enough to kill. A hint of mischief flashed in Violet's eyes. She took my hand, gently coaxing me, and asked, Will you be like that with me? No. I answered decisively, feeling like the tangled thread in my mind was instantly straightened out. I looked into the reflection of myself in Violet's eyes, and sincerely pleaded with her. Violet, if you want to get married later, and you want to find someone who will treat you well, could you prioritize thinking of me? After saying that, I immediately raised my hand to swear. The house and land deeds will be entirely in your name. My work won't affect your pursuit of a PhD. We'll only think about children after you are settled. I swear, I will definitely always be by your side, and I won't let you suffer from postpartum depression again. Before I could finish my words, Violet's face was scarlet. She raised her hand to cover my mouth. What are you talking about? And you've already thought about getting married and having children. She pouted shyly, leaning close to my ear to whisper, If you want to get married, then let's start with you being my boyfriend first, okay? I looked at the smile around Violet's lips, my heart pounding like a drum. I heard the teacher sigh in relief from behind. Oh my, you're so agitated you're actually crying. It wasn't until Violet's hand touched my eye that I slowly realized tears had reflexively escaped. I spread my arms and hugged the person I had loved and missed for so long. What happened after that was similar to the previous life, only the process was much smoother. Under my near-kneeling assurances and the assault of a new house, my lovely father-in-law, though he claimed to be very happy, couldn't help but glare and grind his teeth at me. If the roles were reversed, who would dare come and take their precious daughter away? I'm sure my attitude would be even more unpleasant. In the end, Violet decided to marry me while she was in graduate school. She saw through all the insecurities in my heart. When I was tossing and turning, losing sleep again, she cupped my face and gently said one thing. "I love you, my darling." Oh God, who could resist that? Marriage, we must get married immediately. On the day of my wedding, the guests were almost the same as in the previous life. On my side, because of that phantom alcoholic father, my paternal relatives had cut ties with my family long ago. I didn't even have their phone numbers. Therefore, most of the guests who attended were my and Violet's friends, with the rest being relatives from my father-in-law's side. My friends were all astonished. No one expected it. Ultimately, Violet let me, a lousy student, successfully pursue her. But despite their surprise, everyone still offered sincere blessings. As Violet and I went around raising our glasses, I happened to see the teacher secretly wiping away tears. I was about to go over and tease him, but then I saw him tilt his head back and gulp down water. When he saw me, he immediately glared and said, "Next time you make hot dogs, could you not put so much chili sauce on them?" The corner of my mouth twitched. I could only nod helplessly. Turning away, I saw Violet's best friend Alice, her mouth full of food and cheeks puffed out, winking mischievously at me. I thought for a moment, leaned over, and rubbed Violet's waist, whispering to her, "What genre of novel does your best friend write?" "Detective fiction." "Oh, no wonder." I gently held Violet and stepped forward, pouring her best friend Alice a full glass. Even though I had prepared every precautionary measure, Violet still got pregnant successfully. The timing was exactly the same as in the previous life. I was feeling strange when I suddenly caught Violet's smug expression. "Fine. It's true that even with careful prevention, the enemy within is hard to guard against." Just like the previous life, Violet was adamant about keeping the baby. My in-laws took turns intervening, firmly advising me not to interfere. To the point where I, the baby's father, looked like the biggest villain, and I was helpless. Fortunately, ever since marrying Violet, I had prepared for this, moving the entire factory to the city where she studied. Everything was arranged neatly and thoroughly. I became like a house husband, taking care of all the chores at home, researching menus every day, and bringing meals to Violet at the exact right time. I later found out by chance that people in her company secretly called me the 24-hour filial husband. This title isn't small. I wish they'd give me a certificate of merit too. That would be perfect. I was genuinely afraid that if I slipped up even slightly, Violet would suffer from postpartum depression like in the previous life. I specifically went to my in-laws' house to throw a fit and whine. Eventually, they found me too embarrassing, so they agreed to move in with us. I even secretly took their phones and repeatedly read postpartum depression on the screen. Sure enough, the algorithm is formidable. That day, their short video feeds were full of related content. Under the family's intense care, Violet smiled radiantly every day, the kind of smile that came from the very bottom of her heart. I even proactively connected with the psychologist from the previous life on Instagram, secretly reporting Violet's condition every day. Thankfully, the doctor said everything was normal. Even after Violet gave birth, there were no signs of the issues from the previous life. That was wonderful. The person I loved was safe and healthy. Violet woke up after leaving the delivery room. The moment she opened her eyes and saw me, she let out a chuckle, making me panic and remind her to be careful of her wound. "I'm the one who gave birth, so why are your eyes so swollen?" Violet's warm hand gently caressed my eyelid. As soon as she finished speaking, I felt like crying again. In this life, the super spicy hot dog ingredient scandal still erupted, just like the previous life. Luckily, I had prior experience. I immediately disclosed and transparently displayed the entire factory's production line, from ingredient sourcing to processing, all public. The result was that because the ingredients were genuinely clean, the brand actually gained a bit more fame. As for that old man, in this life, after Violet gave birth, I stayed by her side 24/7. She held our daughter and smiled joyfully every day. The old man fundamentally had no opportunity to approach Violet. Most importantly, I was quick-witted for once. After he stabbed me, I immediately went to the hospital to get a medical assessment of the injury. After that, the man showed his face exactly once. The moment he appeared, I threw the injury assessment report in his face. My threat to call the police immediately scared him so much that he never dared to show up again. I bought a bouquet of sunflowers at the flower shop and conveniently bought a potted cactus for my wife. Unexpectedly, just as I walked out of the shop, I saw Violet holding our daughter and waving at me. "Look, baby, there's Daddy. Daddy bought flowers for Mommy and you." The corners of my eyes curved upwards. I took our daughter from Violet's arms, holding the bouquet of sunflowers up to the little one's face. "Let's go, time to go home and cook dinner for my 2 girls." That night, I held Violet while we slept. In a sleepy haze, I suddenly felt her kiss me. What is it? I rubbed my head against her, too sleepy. I vaguely heard her whisper in my ear. "About the previous life, I'm sorry. It must have been exhausting for you running back and forth between the house and the factory." Previous life? What's that about? I let out a long yawn, still hazy, and nestled back into Violet's embrace, feeling a wetness on my face. "It wasn't exhausting. You were just sick back then." Violet's eyes suddenly stung with tears. She looked at the man sleeping soundly in front of her, and couldn't help but lightly pat his face. This fool. Even in the beginning of this life, he still tried to stay away from me. Luckily, my eyes were sharp enough to hug him and not let go. Whenever she thought about the previous life, Violet couldn't sleep. She gently slipped out of the covers, tucked him back in, and then sat on the edge of the bed, opening her phone to look at the photos taken at the amusement park that year. In the corner of almost every photo was the figure of a teddy bear mascot. Violet flipped through each picture, laughing as she looked, then tears fell again. Her finger stopped on the last picture, a shot from a high angle. The teddy bear in the picture was awkwardly raising its hands to form a heart shape. This fool. No wonder I still fell for you in this life. The person next to her turned over, his hand vaguely reaching out and calling her name. "Wife." "I'm here, just went to the restroom for a minute. Hurry, come back here." Hearing him talk in his sleep, Violet laughed, wiping her tears. Just as she was about to turn off her phone, she caught sight of a corner of paper sticking out from a slightly ajar drawer, a sheet of paper clipped inside a book. She put on her light-rimmed glasses, her eyes behind the lenses looking slightly tired. The paper read, "Moon Plan, Step 1, drop out of school, stay away from Violet. Step 2, start a business as soon as possible." As for Step 3, there was only a period mark after it. Clearly, this fool couldn't think of anything else. He wasn't good at studying when he was in school. It must have been hard for him. This planning paper was even torn from a test paper, his handwriting as messy as chicken scratch. Violet shook her head and laughed, put everything back in its place, and climbed back under the covers. I vaguely opened my eyes to a tiny slit, so sleepy that I nestled in closer, then reached out my large arm and pulled the person I loved back into my embrace. "Hee hee, the moon has come back to hug me."